US officials have confirmed they've paused a shipment of bombs to Israel due to concerns over the IDF's attack on the southern Gazan city of Rafah. A senior administration official says a full-scale assault would be against the wishes of the US. Global Affairs editor John Lyons joins us now. John, just how significant is this move by the United States?
Catherine, I think it's tokenistic. I really don't think it means much. After 7 months of pounding tens of thousands of bombs, American bombs have been dropped on Gaza. Gaza's essentially in rubble now, most parts of it, or 3/4 of the housing has been damaged or destroyed. We've had tens of thousands of men and women killed. 7 months on to say we're pausing the supply, when the president himself has said months ago when I was in Israel, the bombing is indiscriminate. To have a pause now, I think it's more focused on domestic US politics than it is the reality, because of course there's several states now in America where the Democrats have a very slender margin and where the Arab American vote is larger than the margin by which the Democrats hold those states, such as Michigan being the biggest. So I think that this is President Biden trying to, appease the American Arab community.
OK. Do you think that it's likely to have any impact on the Israeli capabilities? Because this was for a future order, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. In my view, no impact at all. Israel has still serious capability. They've got their tanks to the southern parts of Rafah at the moment. The Air Force has been bombing. They're already funded by billions of dollars of US military aid. So I think it's really just a frustration. Benjamin Netanyahu is not listening to the United States. And so I think it's just America's way of trying to say to him, you've got to start listening, but I don't think it's really serious.
If you look at this from a historical perspective, how have previous US administrations dealt with this issue with Israel?
Well, in the past, some US administrations have been much tougher. For example, President Reagan in 1982, when Israel was bombing parts of Beirut and there was huge damage to civilian targets in Beirut, President Reagan rang the Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin and said, stop, or we will cease military aid to you, we'll review the relationship. And within hours, Israel stopped the bombing. In this case, Benjamin Netanyahu is a very different sort of Prime Minister. He is more focused on what the two far-right members of his cabinet think, Benjamin Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich. We're seeing the cabinet at the moment in the pictures, and they can bring down his coalition. So politically, having spent 3 visits there since October 7, this is all about now Benjamin Netanyahu's political survival. He knows that America will never be serious. Will never take any. So if he can, he knows that President Biden's not going to be too tough, but he knows that those 2 ministers sitting at the table with him can bring him down. The American president can't bring him down.
Right. So do you expect there to be any big stick from the US then?
No, I think this is as tough as it's going to get. I don't think with an election year coming, I think President Biden has his eye on also the supporters of Israel in America, the Israeli lobby in the Congress as well, the influence they have. AIPAC as a lobby group in America is hugely powerful, along with the National Rifle Association. They are one of the 2 major lobby groups in the United States on politics. Famously, the Israeli lobby in America can damage candidates. So President Biden is trying to juggle the Israeli lobby on one hand and the anger from the Arab American community on the other. So we're now facing the prospect, the first US president in history who may actually lose office for being too pro-Israel because of those 4 or 5 states. And in the Democrat primaries, the Arab American votes, the Democrat members of the Democrat Party essentially didn't vote, or they're saying they're not going to turn up in November, which can mean that a state like Michigan goes to Donald Trump. So it's this is now, I think, more an American domestic political story than it is a foreign policy story.
Both leaders very much so beholden by their domestic politics on the decisions that they're making on policy there. Can you bring us up to speed on what is the latest on the humanitarian situation in Gaza?
It's catastrophic and getting worse, Catherine, because Rafah now is, of course, closed because the Israeli tanks are there, so there's no aid at all coming through the major one. As the World Food Programme has said, there is now a full-blown famine in the north part of Gaza spreading to the south. People are dying, children are dying now. We've seen pictures of some of that boy recently, a 10-year-old boy who we literally watched him through the media die. The pictures from when he was a healthy 10-year-old relatively to the sort of very skinny and sick-looking 10-year-old. He died. And they're dying. It's lack of food, lack of water. 26 hospitals have now been destroyed. Essentially, there's not much medical care at all. A lot of the world, the foreign aid groups are either have abandoned the place out of fear of security or are finding it hard to operate. And so essentially, it is one of the biggest humanitarian catastrophes of our time, and it's getting worse.